Welcome to the 9th Annual World Ocean Summit. My name is Claire Casey. I'm the Global Head of Policy and Insights for Economist Impact. And we're disappointed not to be in Lisbon this year, but look forward to being there for the next 3 years with the support of Portugal as the official host country. I'd like to welcome everyone to our plenary panel, How States Can Become Better Stakeholders in the Future of the Ocean. We're joined today by 3 distinguished panelists for this session, and we'll speak to them in 2 separate conversations. For the first conversation, I would like to introduce Ricardo Serrão Santos, Minister of Maritime Affairs of Portugal, and Monica Medina, Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and International Environmental and Scientific Affairs at the U.S. Department of State. And for the second part, we'll have an interview with Sabra Noordeen, Special Envoy for Climate Change of the Maldives. Let's just launch right in. Minister Santos, Portugal was an early leader in really raising awareness of our oceans as a resource we needed to protect and treat in a sustainable fashion. You had an ocean strategy in 2006. Can you start us off with a bit of a progress report? How are we doing?
Okay. I think we are now, in international sense, we are now much more aware that we have to take action. I must say that we have a monumental law, the UNCLOS, that can lead us, in fact, for the use of the sea in terms of sustainability and also use it peacefully. But I must say that in many sense, the ocean has been away from the main discussions for too long. I mean, it was present, but it was overcome by other issues like the forest, like landscapes inland, and so on. And I must say, I have the absolute belief that from 2015, the things have changed in international, in the international landscape. If we look for the issues of sustainable development that we all wanted and we all announced since many years, maybe 30 years, first from the development, sustainable development goals of OECD and then the first goals of the United Nations. But in 2015 is the time with Agenda 2030 that the ocean become, in fact, a single or identified objective. It is the objective number 14 of the Agenda 2030. And from there on, we can also spot other difference. The issues, for instance, the first report of the state of the ocean produced by the United Nations also came to around 2015 and 2016. But from there on, we are now already engaged on the production of this, the third report. And this has a meaning, is the way that we find that in international point of view, countries must be engaged with healthy oceans. The oceans have been threatened by our activities. They have been supporting, in fact, the oceans have been supporting the way we have been industrializing. But they reach also a moment of big difficulties. And these difficulties are not related solely with overfishing or pollution, of which the plastics. They are related with something that is still invisible and is weakening this system. Acidification, desoxygenation, thermal expansion. And this has effects, of course, on things like biodiversity and even the way that the ocean can produce food and food from the society. Also, another thing that came and alarmed and put the nations in defense concerning the issues of the ocean is the IPCC report on the ocean and the cryosphere, and it only came in 2019. But it shows how, in terms of in international point of view, the things, the landscape, the ecosystem in fact had changed. And I believe that in this decade we will be more concentrated on how to bring solutions up to return the oceans to an healthy state and making it productive because we need it. And I believe now we have the absolute notion that the oceans are shared. Is a kind of shared resource. This is a kind of is a shared, has no borders, and we have, in the countries, each individual country has responsibility for the future of the ocean, and Portugal thinks that each, as we try to do here in Portugal, is leading by example and adopt best practices at national level, engage with the multiple stakeholders, and in view to improve the sustainability of human activities related to the ocean. But there is a lot to do in many areas. Portugal is a country that is grounding in our history, culture, and geography to the ocean. It is a kind of priority. We are now on our third strategy for the ocean. That one is really grounded on the main international and the European strategies, like the European Green Deal, of course, at the United Nations 2030 agenda, and we think our vision in this strategy, that of course we must be led by science, by scientific knowledge, in view to implement a new governance that is stable and based on global concerns.
So Minister Santos laid out that really we need every state to be active and contributing on this issue. We've seen a real acceleration in activity from the United States over the past year. Can you lay out where the oceans fit in the overall policy of the Biden administration?
Yes, that's a great question, Claire, and thank you so much for having me here today. I love the Economist Summit every year. It's a great forum for discussion of oceans, and I've attended in the past and really appreciate the chance to be here to talk about the Biden administration and how we are back when it comes to oceans. And the U.S. has led in oceans in the past. As you know, Secretary John Kerry started an Our Ocean Conference that was part of that wave that Minister Santos described over the last decade of increasing awareness and activity around oceans and ocean conservation. So let me take a minute and talk about the Biden administration and what we're doing in the ocean. First, we want to maximize the environmental, economic, and social benefits that the ocean provides. And one way that we're going to do this is having joined the High Ocean Panel, the high-level panel on oceans. We're beginning to plan how we want to use oceans. As the minister described, oceans are much more crowded. They're busier today. There's much more activity. And in order to maximize our ability to use ocean resources sustainably, we need to plan. We're also looking at ocean climate interactions and want to focus on ocean-based mitigation of climate change. We really think that's a very, very important area for us to develop in the future. As he said, we haven't gotten as far in the ocean as we have on land in understanding the climate impacts and particularly trying to use ocean-based solutions. And then finally, science. As the minister said, we are very dedicated to ocean science and technology, to ocean observations, to improving our ability to understand the way that oceans will change due to climate change and help people to be prepared, to have advanced warnings, to be able to adapt to climate change. So the Biden administration is fully engaged on oceans. We've also taken the 30 by 30 pledge, so we're hoping to reach 30% of our oceans protected by 2030, and we're almost there. We have a huge EEZ, but we have well over 25% of it protected now. So that's another area of focus for us.
Great, thank you. Minister Santos, when you think about international cooperation on the oceans, this is the ultimate commons, right? 95% of the ocean sits outside of national jurisdictions. What is the appropriate role of states? How can they lead, and where should we be turning to the private sector? Is there a clear view from you on where states should be leading versus where we should be relying on other parties and actors?
No, I believe that we have to count on all. Of course, in a certain sense, yes, the government should lead. They are bound by the international law of the sea, and but when the International Convention for the Law of the Sea was implemented, there are a lot of issues that were not clear in those times. The issues of climate change were being raised. We knew that the things were changing. IPCC would be created by around those times. But we were not aware of things like acidification or even desoxygenation, and the biodiversity was not clearly spotted by this convention. So we need still to improve some areas. That's why, for instance, the BBNG process is really very, very, very important in view to engage the different nations that are part of the United Nations on the protection and the conservation of this of the biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction. We already have, of course, problems on the national jurisdictions. Imagine that we do not regulate properly the issues beyond national jurisdiction. And that's where also the science count very much. But nowadays we cannot do it alone. It's not an issue between scientists and politicians or governments only. For the policies be successful, we need to have the society engaged on this process. And when we need the society, we need we mention not only NGOs or non-governmental foundations or whatever, but also the economic sector, the industry. They are a very, very important part of this process. And we will only be successful in good governance. Of course, if we have, we are advised by science, but we have also the consentment of the society. And this would bring me to another thing, is that we need to have well-informed society. For that, they support really the governance that is based on the best scientific knowledge. And to proceed, it is not an easy task. Namely in times where fake news and post-truths are dominated or are around. That's why a society that is educated and the issues of ocean literacy are also important, in view that we have the society together with the most advanced and proper governance for our common ocean, because this is a common ocean. It is, and all the countries should see that something that happens in their economic exclusive zone, or their territory, is embedded in the global process and need to have, in fact, joint cooperation to proceed healthy oceans. And in this, the industry is fundamental also, and they may have a role. And we see nowadays that at several levels of commerce and industry and economic interests, they may the companies, the corporations may play a central role in defining also and agreeing with some rules and conditions that permit, in fact, the success, the economic success, but done in a proper manner, in a sustainable way. That's, I would also like to refer the high-level panel for a sustainable blue economy that came out last year with the transformations paper with a set of indications how we should proceed. And all these will be discussed, will be embedded in our United Nations conference on the oceans, and that will take place here in June, in Lisbon, in June 2022, co-organized with Kenya, and with side events, one dedicated to the youth, but the other dedicated with the issues of finances and economy, because finance is a very, very important a very important sector when we want to fund a new economy that is related with the ocean in a matter that was different the way we did in the last century. They're carbonized and less destructive and more productive.
Assistant Secretary Medina, Minister Santos mentioned the importance of societal support. We often talk about governments like they have complete freedom of action, and we know that's not the case. There are domestic political considerations that constrain what we're able to do, including the ratification of international treaties. Are there lessons from the United States and how the other countries might learn from? Are we thinking about how to build domestic political support, educate the population, and get real buy-in into the role of states in safeguarding the oceans?
Well, I think it's actually a really interesting time. As we are here at the conference, there's a really important negotiation taking place in Nairobi, Kenya, at the UN Environment Program at their annual meeting. We've begun the negotiation of a global treaty on plastic pollution, particularly as it impacts the ocean. And that is a huge catalyst to change. Overwhelmingly, bipartisanly last year, called the Save Our Seas Act, that is driving us towards this negotiation. And all the countries in the world are coming. It's highly anticipated. Industry, NGOs, individuals, countries, everyone agrees we need to get our arms around ocean plastic pollution. So I'm really looking forward to that as the kind of negotiation that will help to galvanize the support that we need, political support that we need globally. And we already have seen a huge wave of momentum towards that. And I do believe that agreements like the one I'm anticipating we'll negotiate in Nairobi, where this meeting is taking place, are the wave of the future, where we agree to national contributions or national standards that we all contribute towards a greater global effort to reduce, in this case, it'll be plastic pollution, but it's similar to the climate agreement, the Paris Accord, where countries come, there's no one-size-fits-all solution to a global problem like this. Oceans are global. So I think these sorts of new types of agreements, building the kind of momentum that we need to actually change something as monumental as plastic pollution or climate change. So I have a lot of hope that internationally, working together, we can make a huge amount of progress.
Fantastic. International agreements are part of this puzzle. Regional action is also a part of the puzzle, where regions have a common interest in addressing some issues. Minister Santos, you've been very involved, particularly in the European Union's efforts around oceans. Are there lessons that we can take away from those experiences and how to effectively address some of these regionally specific issues and enable better cooperation?
Yeah, thank you very much. And this brings me to a very interesting conversation I had with the assistant, Mrs. Monica Medina, the assistant secretary for the Oceans and International Government and Scientific Affairs of the Biden administration, was related with the issues of IUU fishing, something that we didn't mention here, but we both, me and Monica, find that it's very, very relevant. And maybe it's one of the nightmares of these days on which concern the issues of food from the oceans and the sustainability of our oceans is how IUU fishing, the fight for IUU fishing is far from completed. And it had improved a lot, of course, because with the creation of all these regional councils for the management of fish that are around our seas and oceans, some parts of the ocean, in fact, do not have these regional councils for the management of the fisheries, but these regional, those that exist, had improved our knowledge of the state of the fishing stocks, has improved the management, and fortunately we were able to recover some of the stocks that had been depleted, and this is a good thing that we should take in mind. The good experience, like the bluefin tuna, has improved in some areas of our oceans, but we, besides of this regional governance of our basins, sea basins and ocean basins, we are still far away from this nightmare that is the illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing that is disturbing the economies of many countries and disturbing the economies. Yesterday I had a meeting here on the EU and Africa Union cooperation, and Africa is one of the countries, for instance, that is clearly affected by the issues on IUU fishing, as others like seeds, the small developing islands and developing states. And this is something that we should share and care more strongly. I know that the United States is very focused on this. The European Union is very focused on this, but it's far away from being solved. And a lot of work has to be done regionally, of course.
Assistant Secretary Medina, I saw you nodding. Did you have something to add to that?
I do. I think the minister is exactly right. Problems like illegal fishing are huge all over the world, but one way we can solve them is working regionally, because the ocean is huge. So if we work together in regions, we can actually clamp down in a really effective way on problems like illegal fishing. I also think certain regions have things in common that make it easier for them to work together, like the small island developing states in the Pacific. And we're holding a conference in Palau in a couple of months that will talk about the importance of working together regionally in a place like the South Pacific Ocean, for example. And the most exciting thing I've seen recently is nations coming together to connect their marine protected areas. So now 4 countries in the Americas have come together, Ecuador, Colombia, Panama, and Costa Rica, and created together the largest marine protected area in the world, working to co-manage. And that is a huge advancement, and I hope other countries will do the same thing.
Wonderful. Thank you. We are almost out of time, so I'd love to end asking you both the same question, which is looking at the challenge ahead. It is daunting, but there does seem to be a very positive trajectory in terms of activity and momentum in protecting our oceans. Where do you see the sort of brightest light? What is your hope that we have progress on this year in the ocean space, specifically in the role of states in becoming better stakeholders of the oceans?
I think it is young people, actually, and I think back to Economist Summit a few years ago where a young woman stood on the stage and said, I'm going to start something big that has to do with oceans and technology. It was called the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. Her name is Daniela Fernandez. Daniela, if you're watching, hello. She started the Sustainable Ocean Alliance on stage at an Economist Summit. And 5 years later, she has helped dozens of young entrepreneurs start ocean-based solution companies, delivering new solutions to the ocean. So I think it's technology and young people that give me hope and that I have the most optimism about this year, next year, this decade, and this century.
Thank you. Minister Santos.
Okay, Monica was perfect one, identifying from what she said. So I just want to add something. This we will have the United Nations Ocean Conference in Lisbon from 27th of June to the 1st of July, and my hope really is we'll be discussing. Let me tell, we'll be discussing the targets for SDG 14, SDG 14, and I hope that we came out with commitments from individual countries to proceed and complete these objectives, and the different components of objective SDG 14, and that because we are behind of what was proposed, and so this is my really willingness that we succeed in this conference, bringing the countries to commit individually with the objectives of SDG 14.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
It is going to be a big year for oceans. Thank you both so much for your time and your insights. And for the second part of our conversation on the role of states as stakeholders in the ocean, we have Sabra Noordeen, the Special Envoy for Climate Change from the Maldives. Sabra, a healthy ocean is important to every country on Earth, every person on Earth, but it plays a special role for small island developing states, and the Maldives in particular. Can you elucidate that a bit for our audience?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I think, for coastal communities like the Maldives, specifically small island states, a healthy ocean is the foundation of our lives and our livelihoods. It's simply impossible to discuss the impacts of the climate crisis without addressing healthy oceans in the Maldives. And we know that with the impacts of the climate crisis, with temperatures exceeding above 1.5 degrees, we would lose most of our coral reefs, and that would have a devastating impact on our main industries, which are fisheries and tourism. And we just simply cannot lose such a wide range of rich and diverse biodiversity. I mean, it's not just about, us who live on the islands, but everything else that surrounds us as well.
Wonderful. So what is the priority of your government in terms of its own action on this issue?
Well, the Maldives has always been on the front line of the climate crisis, but I think it is definitely becoming even more urgent now. I mean, in terms of the actions that the Maldives takes, we have this administration has initiated a single-use plastic phase-out ban, which we hope to see implemented by 2030, because waste management is one of the biggest environmental challenges that we have in the Maldives. And our other initiative, which we've been practicing for decades, for centuries even, is sustainable fishing. Pole and line, specifically pole and line fishing for tuna, is one of the most sustainable ways of fishing, and the Maldives is very proud to utilize it. But the problem that we face is that even if we, fish sustainably within our waters, I mean, tuna is a migratory species. If everyone else isn't fishing sustainably, then that doesn't help the fish stocks. And also, we would like to see sustainability valued more on the international market than conventional methods.
That takes us to the need for international cooperation. One individual state can only do so much when we're talking about our vast oceans. What are you looking for out of this year? It's a big year, and in terms of international agreements and negotiations on the ocean. What are your priorities? What are you looking for from other states?
Well, I mean, the main goal is obviously limiting temperature rise, to well below 1.5 degrees, and that requires a significant and drastic cut in carbon emissions, in global carbon emissions. So that is, of course, what we'll keep advocating for. But the other main goal is support financially and technologically. Climate financing is a huge challenge for the Maldives and also many other countries in the global south. We're already spending a significant amount of our own budget on adaptation measures, and these are immediate adaptation measures such as coastal protection and providing fresh water services. I mean, the urgency of having to address immediate adaptation means that we sometimes don't have the capacity to invest in longer term resilience, and so that we will definitely be pushing for those pledges on climate financing, especially on adaptation, to be met. And the issue of loss and damage is certainly not going away. And I think we will be expecting action on that this year.
Wonderful. We can't look at any of these issues outside of the lens of climate change. But specifically on ocean governance, is the Maldives seeking anything specific out of international negotiations on the governance of our oceans?
On the governance of our oceans, well, domestically, what we are trying to do is establish marine protected areas, more marine protected areas. We're trying to protect at least 20% of our ocean territories. And it's difficult to do, and we understand that, but we're also signed up to the 30 by 30 initiative to try and protect at least 30% of the world's oceans by 2030. And we're also very active in the IOTC, and we will keep pushing our message for the sustainable methods of fisheries to be predominant rather than what is happening now, because our stocks cannot handle this business as usual.
In the first part of this session that we're in today on this role of states and stakeholders as stakeholders in the ocean, there was a discussion of the role of regional agreements around overfishing, that the regional approach may actually be the most effective when we're talking about overfishing as a specific challenge for states. Is the Maldives involved in any activities for regional cooperation on that issue?
Well, we're part of the South Asian Association of Regional Cooperation, and we're also very much involved in, Indian Ocean security and maintaining very positive relations with all our neighbors. And because tuna, our main, fisheries, which our fisheries industry is based on, is a migratory stock, it is something that we have always advocated for, which is sustainable fishing. And we have enacted domestic legislation that is specifically against IUU. But it's an ongoing kind of advocacy effort, I would say, especially regionally and internationally, to get our message out.
Yeah, there's only so much states can do, but one of the activities can be educating the public and building popular support for a sustainable approach to managing our oceans. Are there lessons from the Maldives? Do you think that there is a broad support and understanding of how vital a healthy ocean is that other states can learn from?
Thank you. I think that's a really great question, and I think education and awareness is vital if we want sustainability to succeed. We've brought in policies such as marine protected areas, shark fishing bans, protecting turtle species, making sure that we use pole and line for our fishing. And those policies are not always easy to implement or maintain, especially in the face of competing markets where, countries that necessarily don't employ the same methods seem to be receiving a better price for their fish products. But it's something that we've continued to maintain, and it's something that we're really trying to increase our focus on education and awareness of how, there is more value in having more biodiversity in the ocean to the Maldives than just a reckless, utilization of it.
Are you sensing progress? Do you think that awareness is growing internationally?
I think so, because one of the biggest successes is how much more prominent the ocean is now part of the climate discussions, and this year especially because of all the focus around the oceans. As I said before, the Maldives certainly cannot speak about the climate crisis without bringing in the role of the oceans. It's impossible for us. So I do see movement on it. I see a lot more focus on, adaptation and protection surrounding and linking it to financial support such as blue bonds, more protection of marine areas, really trying to advocate for things like, leaving seagrasses intact, or we recently established the IUCN Red List in the Maldives, which means that we now have a red list specifically for the Maldives. And that, I think, will really help us domestically increase our advocacy and awareness efforts.
Wonderful. What gives you a sense of hope, looking out at the progress we've made in making oceans a more prominent issue and really centering the oceans conversation in the climate discourse? As we look forward toward a big year in ocean negotiations and states really taking a more robust role in managing the oceans, what are you hopeful for and what are you worried about? Where could we go wrong?
What am I worried about? That's not a good question this week. I'm worried that we may not meet our goals, but that's also, I guess, the ambitions that we set is also what keeps me inspired and hopeful. And I do think there is movement on it. There's certainly more people talking about it, more people pushing for greater action on ocean conservation, more private sector involvement. We see more, for instance, within the Maldives, we see more of our private sector in terms of, tourist facilities, increasingly engaged in activities which promote ocean conservation and protection, and how that they believe will advance and kind of, support the tourism industry in the Maldives. So I do think that we are making progress, but sometimes it doesn't always feel that way.
Right. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with, something that they should be thinking about, looking for, aware of in the coming year in terms of ocean management?
Not specifically. In terms of policy, there's so much awareness and advocacy surrounding the oceans that's coming in and that will be given a focus this year. But I think I would say, that there's so much wonder in the ocean, but those kind of baselines of wonder are shifting. And all of this effort is going in to try and stop those baselines of wonder shifting. And I think that's what we have to focus on.
Thank you, Sabra. And I'd like to thank all of our panelists for their contributions to this discussion today. Over the course of the last few minutes, we have talked about how much progress there has been in terms of centering oceans in the climate discussion, raising awareness, and building support for a common purpose of ensuring a healthy ocean. But what's really come out of this is that there's only so much an individual state can do. And there's a vital role for regional cooperation and for cooperation at the global level. Those negotiations are happening today, and I think we'll all be watching over the course of the next days, weeks, and months and years to see how states can not just individually work, but come together to be better stakeholders of this, our greatest resource, our oceans. Thank you very much.